The restaurant manager threw out the war veteran for not belonging. 4 minutes later, the entire dining room stood and applauded the soldier. Le Bernardin, Manhattan. Friday evening, September 19th, 1997, 7:45 p.m. One of New York's most prestigious restaurants where reservation lists stretch months ahead and dinner for 2 costs more than most people earn in a week creates the perfect environment for elitist discrimination disguised as maintaining standards. Richard Sterling Blackwood, restaurant manager, 15 years in high-end dining, self-appointed guardian of social hierarchy, surveys his domain with the satisfaction of someone who's perfected the art of keeping inappropriate people away from tables that should serve only Manhattan's elite. Sterling represents everything dangerous about service industry power when it's corrupted by classism and social discrimination. His ability to determine who belongs in expensive establishments makes him gatekeeper of privilege, protector of exclusivity, enforcer of unwritten rules that separate worthy customers from undesirable elements. Tonight, Le Bernardin hosts 60 diners, investment bankers, entertainment executives, foreign diplomats, and celebrities whose presence validates the restaurant's reputation as gathering place for society's upper echelon. Every table represents minimum $200 per person, maximum social status, and Sterling's careful curation of appropriate clientele. At table 12, Mike Tyson sits with his wife, celebrating their anniversary with quiet dinner that allows normal conversation without usual crowd of autograph seekers and publicity that make romantic evenings impossible in less exclusive venues. Mike wears conservative dark suit, chosen specifically to blend into sophisticated atmosphere without attracting attention that would disrupt other diners' experiences. His presence adds celebrity cachet that Sterling values, but more importantly, Mike's respectful behavior demonstrates the class that money alone cannot purchase. Through Le Bernardin's glass doors walks Sergeant First Class James Rodriguez, 28 years old, recently returned from his 3rd deployment overseas, carrying invisible wounds that 3 Purple Hearts can't adequately represent, but wearing visible signs that immediately trigger Sterling's discriminatory instincts. James wears clean but worn military jacket over simple shirt, dress pants that show years of use, boots polished to military standard but clearly not expensive civilian footwear. His appearance suggests modest income, working-class background, and most importantly, to Sterling's elitist assessment, someone who doesn't belong among sophisticated clientele. But James carries himself with dignity earned through service that Sterling's privileged background never required. His posture remains military straight despite psychological weight from experiences that civilian life can't erase or understand. His presence commands respect from anyone intelligent enough to recognize sacrifice when they encounter it. James approaches the hostess station with reservation confirmation for table. He booked weeks ago using savings accumulated during overseas deployment, planning special dinner to mark his transition back to civilian life and process military experiences that require quiet reflection. "Good evening," James says to the hostess, a young woman named Michelle, who recognizes military bearing immediately through her veteran father's influence. "I have reservation under Rodriguez, 8 p.m. Michelle checks her list, finds James's reservation, prepares to escort him to his assigned table. But Sterling intercepts the interaction with practiced smoothness that disguises discrimination as customer service. "Excuse me, sir," Sterling addresses James with tone that appears polite while establishing immediate social hierarchy. "I'm afraid there's been some confusion about our dress code this evening." James looks down at his clean, appropriate attire, recognizes immediately the situation every working-class person dreads: being judged inadequate by service industry gatekeepers who mistake expensive clothing for personal worth. "Is there a problem with what I'm wearing?" James asks calmly, his military training providing emotional control despite obvious frustration with civilian discrimination he never encountered while serving overseas. Sterling's assessment reveals the cruel calculation that drives elitist discrimination in expensive establishments where maintaining standards provides justification for excluding people based on economic status rather than character quality. Bernardin maintains certain expectations about appropriate dinner attire, Sterling explains, gesturing toward other diners whose expensive clothing advertises their financial status. "Perhaps you'd be more comfortable at establishment that better suits your style." The condescension in Sterling's voice carries across the dining room, attracting attention from nearby tables where sophisticated diners begin processing entertainment that discrimination provides when performed with professional polish. James maintains dignity despite public humiliation designed to force his departure, without technically refusing service that could generate legal complaints or negative publicity for restaurant management. "I made a reservation 2 weeks ago," James states quietly. "Saved money specifically for this dinner. My service record qualifies me for basic respect in any American establishment." Sterling's expression hardens as James's mention of military service challenges the social hierarchy that Sterling has spent 15 years establishing and protecting through systematic exclusion of inappropriate clientele. "Service record doesn't change dress code requirements," Sterling responds coldly. "This is high-end establishment serving discerning clientele who expect appropriate atmosphere. Your presence would make other guests uncomfortable." Mike Tyson, sitting 30 feet away at table 12, processes the developing confrontation through Brooklyn instincts that immediately recognize class-based discrimination and power abuse, targeting someone who deserves protection rather than harassment. Mike could ignore the situation, avoid involvement in strangers' problems that might generate negative publicity, or complicate his anniversary dinner. But his street conditioning makes him incapable of watching service industry discrimination target military veteran who earned respect through sacrifice. James attempts diplomatic resolution that preserves his dignity while accommodating Sterling's obvious intention to prevent his seating among elite clientele whose comfort apparently requires excluding working-class patrons. "I understand maintaining atmosphere," James says respectfully, "but I served 3 tours overseas protecting everyone's right to enjoy places like this. All I want is quiet dinner to process coming home." Sterling's response reveals the depth of his elitist contempt for anyone whose appearance suggests economic limitation rather than social privilege that validates expensive dining experiences. "Your military service is commendable," Sterling says with patronizing tone that reduces James's sacrifice to irrelevant personal history. "But this establishment serves sophisticated clientele who expect exclusive atmosphere. Perhaps military dining facilities would be more appropriate for your needs." The calculated cruelty of Sterling's suggestion that military veterans should eat in cafeterias rather than civilian restaurants creates audible reaction from nearby tables, where diners begin recognizing that discrimination has crossed into genuinely offensive territory. Mike stands from table 12, his movement controlled but carrying authority that immediately transforms restaurant atmosphere from background entertainment into focused attention on developing moral crisis. The maitre d' notices Mike's movement, recognizes potential celebrity involvement in discrimination incident that could generate positive or negative publicity depending on management's response to developing situation. Mike approaches Sterling and James with measured steps that demonstrate controlled purpose rather than aggressive intervention, his presence filling space in ways that change power dynamics without requiring verbal announcement. "Evening, gentlemen," Mike says calmly, addressing both Sterling and James with respectful tone that acknowledges everyone's dignity while positioning himself where moral intervention becomes possible, if necessary. Sterling recognizes Mike immediately, his discriminatory confidence wavering as celebrity attention complicates what should have been simple removal of inappropriate patron without generating publicity complications. "Mr. Tyson, such pleasure having you dine with us tonight. I hope everything has been satisfactory." Sterling's tone transforms from condescending authority to obsequious customer service. Mike nods politely while assessing situation that his street psychology immediately recognizes as power abuse, targeting vulnerable person who lacks resources to defend himself against service industry discrimination. "Everything's been excellent," Mike responds, then addresses James directly. "Good evening, sir. I couldn't help but notice some discussion about seating arrangements." James recognizes Mike immediately, but maintains dignity despite celebrity attention that might provide solution to his discrimination problem or complicate situation beyond simple restaurant access. "Just trying to enjoy dinner I reserved and saved for," James explains quietly. "Apparently my appearance doesn't meet their standards for sophisticated clientele." Sterling realizes his discrimination has attracted attention from celebrity whose opinion could affect restaurant reputation, and his continued employment if word spreads about his treatment of military veteran. "Mr. Tyson, just maintaining our atmosphere standards." Sterling attempts justification that portrays discrimination as quality control rather than class-based prejudice. Mike's analysis penetrates Sterling's rationalization with precision that exposes service industry discrimination as exactly the moral failure it represents when stripped of professional justification. "Atmosphere standards," Mike asks, positioning himself where Sterling must acknowledge both Mike's celebrity status and James's obvious military bearing. "What exactly about this gentleman's appearance violates your standards?" Sterling recognizes dangerous territory where honest explanation would reveal discriminatory policies that could generate legal complications and negative publicity for Le Bernardin's elite reputation. "Well, we expect certain level of presentation from our clientele. Dress code ensures appropriate dining experience for all guests." Mike's response transcends Sterling's understanding of how moral authority operates when it encounters systematic discrimination disguised as customer service protocols. "I see," Mike says calmly. "And what's your policy regarding military veterans who've served overseas, protecting everyone's right to dine wherever they choose?" James stands straighter as Mike's question reframes the interaction from service industry discrimination into respect for military sacrifice that civilian establishments should honor rather than dismiss. Sterling realizes his discrimination has evolved into public education about respect and sacrifice that could damage his reputation throughout Manhattan's restaurant industry if handled improperly. "We certainly respect military service," Sterling backpedals desperately, "but dress code applies to everyone equally, regardless of background." Mike extends his right hand towards Sterling in gesture that appears respectful but carries educational implications beyond casual celebrity interaction. "Let me shake your hand, Sterling. Professional courtesy between people who serve others. You in hospitality, me in entertainment, Sergeant Rodriguez in military protection of American freedoms. Sterling hesitates, recognizing that Mike's request carries weight beyond simple celebrity acknowledgement, but refusing would confirm disrespect in front of 60 dining witnesses whose opinions affect restaurant reputation. Sterling extends his hand, expecting normal courtesy that will conclude confrontation and allow strategic resolution of discrimination incident without further publicity complications. Mike's grip activates immediately, not gradually but comprehensively, engaging pressure applications that 15 years of restaurant management never prepared Sterling to understand or counter effectively. This is what service feels like when it's dedicated to protecting others rather than excluding them, Mike says quietly, his voice carrying to nearby tables where sophisticated diners lean forward to process educational demonstration. Sterling's elitist confidence evaporates as he recognizes complete helplessness against capabilities that celebrity status concealed rather than accurately advertised to service industry gatekeepers. "I understand," Sterling gasps, his professional composure cracking under controlled demonstration of authentic authority versus artificial social hierarchy. Mike releases Sterling immediately, addresses the broader lesson that extends beyond immediate situation into character education for restaurant management and dining witnesses. Sergeant Rodriguez earned the right to dine anywhere in America through 3 overseas deployments, protecting our freedom to choose where we eat, Mike announces, his voice carrying across dining room where 60 sophisticated witnesses process moral education. His service record should guarantee respect, not discrimination. His sacrifice should earn gratitude, not exclusion. His presence should honor any establishment, not compromise its atmosphere. The dining room erupts in spontaneous applause as diners recognize moral courage and military sacrifice that Sterling's discrimination attempted to dismiss as inappropriate for sophisticated clientele. James's composure finally cracks as overwhelming community support validates his service and dignity in ways that civilian discrimination had systematically attacked throughout his transition to post-military life. Sterling retreats toward restaurant management, his discriminatory authority permanently altered by encounter with moral principles that service industry hierarchy cannot override when authentic leadership intervenes constructively. The maître d', recognizing liability exposure and reputational damage from discrimination incident, immediately escorts James to premium table while publicly apologizing for management's inappropriate treatment of military veteran. Within hours, Le Bernardin's discrimination incident spreads through social media and restaurant industry networks, establishing immediately that class-based prejudice against military veterans might attract attention from people whose moral authority transcends celebrity status. Sterling's employment terminates before the weekend ends, restaurant management recognizing that discriminatory policies create legal liability and negative publicity that outweigh any perceived benefit from excluding working-class patrons. James Rodriguez enjoys finest meal of his civilian life, surrounded by community support and respect that his military service earned, but civilian society rarely acknowledges adequately when discrimination masquerades as quality control. Mike returns to his anniversary dinner with satisfaction that comes from using celebrity platform constructively rather than simply enjoying privilege without contributing to community protection when moral intervention becomes necessary. Years later, James credits the Mike Tyson encounter as moment his faith in civilian appreciation for military sacrifice was restored through demonstration that community protection extends beyond military service into ongoing moral responsibility. Mike taught me that respect for veterans isn't just about parades and ceremonies, James tells veterans groups. It's about standing up to discrimination when you see it, protecting dignity when it's threatened, and remembering that service continues in civilian life through moral courage. The lesson transcends restaurant politics. It's about understanding that true class comes from character rather than clothing, that respect should be earned through sacrifice rather than purchased through wealth, and that moral authority requires defending dignity when discrimination attacks virtue. One elitist manager learned that lesson through direct demonstration that assumptions about appropriate clientele can be dramatically incorrect when authentic protectors recognize their responsibility to defend military sacrifice against civilian prejudice. Le Bernardin still serves Manhattan's elite, but staff will tell newcomers about the night discrimination against a war veteran attracted attention from someone who understood that real sophistication comes from respecting those who served rather than excluding them based on economic appearance. The 4 minutes that transformed discriminatory manager into unemployed cautionary tale excluded veteran into honored guest, and celebrity into community protector through demonstration that moral courage transcends social hierarchy when authentic character responds to situations requiring immediate protective intervention for military sacrifice that civilian society must never forget or dismiss.